Jae-sung and his wife Min-seo had been looking forward to their spring trip to Paris for months. They both worked hard at their jobs in Seoul and desperately needed a break. When the plane finally touched down at Charles de Gaulle Airport, they couldn't contain their excitement. As they rode into the city in a taxi, Jae-sung and Min-seo admired the beautiful old buildings and charming city streets whizzing by outside the window. Jae-sung had visited Paris once before, back when he was a university student. He had fond but fuzzy memories of wandering the city's historic neighborhoods and soaking up the art and culture. He couldn't wait to share the magic of Paris with Min-seo on her first visit. When they arrived at their hotel in the heart of Montmartre, Jae-sung and Min-seo were enchanted by the lobby's classic Parisian decor. After checking in and dropping their bags in the room, they immediately set out to explore the neighborhood. Montmartre, perched on a hill in northern Paris, was everything they had imagined and more. Narrow cobblestone streets wound between charming old stone buildings. Around every corner was a cute cafe, bakery, or wine bar. The sound of an accordion floated through the air, making them feel like they had stepped back in time. "I can see why you fell in love with Paris when you came here as a student," Min-seo remarked, her eyes shining as she took in the picturesque scene. "I already adore it, and we've only just arrived." Jae-sung grinned and took her hand. "Just wait until you see the Sacré-Cœur Basilica and the view over the whole city from the top of the hill. This is only the beginning." They meandered down the street hand in hand, stopping to peek in shop windows and admire the quaint old buildings. The bouquets of flowers and cute chalkboard signs outside the cafes looked like something straight out of a movie set. On a little square, an elderly man was playing the accordion as a few people swayed to the music. Min-seo tugged Jae-sung into an impromptu dance, both of them laughing as they twirled to the quintessentially Parisian tune. Any lingering stress from their hectic lives in Seoul melted away. As evening fell, the bistros and brasseries started filling up, and the mouth-watering scent of French cuisine wafted through the streets. At a cozy candlelit restaurant, Jae-sung and Min-seo lingered over a meal of steak frites and red wine. "Paris is even more wonderful than I imagined," Min-seo said dreamily as they clinked glasses. "I already don't want this trip to end." "Good thing we still have a whole week to soak it all in," Jae-sung replied with a smile. "By the time we go home, you'll practically feel like a real Parisian." Walking back to the hotel under the twinkling lights strung across the narrow lanes, Jae-sung and Min-seo felt lighter than they had in a long time. Paris had an almost magical ability to make you slow down and appreciate the simple pleasures in life. When they reached their charming hotel room, Min-seo threw open the tall windows and leaned out to take in the glimmering city lights. Jae-sung wrapped his arms around her from behind and rested his chin on her shoulder. They stood like that for a long moment, breathing in the crisp evening air and marveling at their good fortune to be together in this enchanting city. "I already know this is going to be the most amazing trip," Min-seo said softly, turning in his arms to kiss him. "Thank you for bringing me here and showing me your Paris. I love you." "I love you too," Jae-sung murmured. "And I promise, this is only the beginning of the magic." Tired but blissfully happy, they fell into bed, eager for the Parisian adventures that tomorrow would bring. That night, they both dreamed of winding cobblestone streets, sidewalk cafes, and stealing kisses in front of the Eiffel Tower, the city of light already weaving its timeless spell. The next morning, Jae-sung and Min-seo woke up early, eager to make the most of their first full day in Paris. The sun was just starting to peek over the rooftops as they stepped out of their hotel and into the quiet streets of Montmartre. At this early hour, the neighborhood felt like a different world from the lively, bustling place it had been the night before. The only sounds were the distant rumble of the metro and the chirping of birds in the trees. The air smelled of freshly baked bread and strong coffee from the cafes, just starting to open for the day. Jae-sung and Min-seo wandered hand in hand through the peaceful streets, marveling at the charm of the old buildings in the soft morning light. The pale stone facades were painted in shades of cream, blush pink, and pale blue, with colorful shutters and flower boxes at the windows. Ivy and wisteria vines climbed the walls, making the whole neighborhood feel like a secret garden. "It's hard to believe this is the same place as last night," Min Seo remarked, her voice hushed in the morning quiet. "It feels like we're the only people in the world." Jae-sung nodded, breathing in the cool, clean air. "That's the magic of Paris. It has so many different sides to it. I love discovering the city like this, without all the crowds." As they rounded a corner, they both gasped at the sight of the majestic Sacré-Cœur Basilica gleaming white in the distance. The domed church perched at the very top of Montmartre Hill, looking out over the waking city. "Wow," breathed Min Seo, shading her eyes to take in the view. "It's even more beautiful than in the pictures." Jae-sung grinned, remembering the first time he had laid eyes on the famous landmark. "And the view from the top is even better. Come on, let's climb up there and see Paris from above." They started up the steep flights of stone steps leading up to the base of Sacré-Cœur, stopping often to catch their breath and look out over the sea of rooftops spreading out below them. By the time they reached the top, the sun had fully risen, bathing the white stone church in golden light. From their vantage point, in front of the basilica, Jae-sung and Min Seo could see all of Paris laid out before them like a postcard. The Eiffel Tower rose up in the distance, hazy in the morning light. The Seine wound through the city like a silver ribbon. Even the modern skyscrapers of La Défense shimmered on the horizon. They stood there for a long time, holding each other and soaking in the incredible view. Min Seo wiped away a tear, overwhelmed by the beauty of the city spread out below them. "Thank you for bringing me here," she whispered to Jae-sung. "This is a moment I'll never forget." Jae-sung kissed the top of her head, feeling equally moved. "And just think, the day has barely started. We still have so much left to discover together." Ravenous after their climb, they descended the hill in search of breakfast. A chalked sign outside a little cafe advertising fresh croissants and coffee lured them in. They took a tiny round table outside and watched the neighborhood coming to life over steaming cups of café au lait and flaky, buttery pastries. "I could get used to this," Min Seo said dreamily, nibbling a croissant. "Paris mornings are pure magic." "Just wait until you see what the rest of the day has in store," Jae-sung replied, reaching for her hand across the table. "In Paris, every moment feels magical, and there's no one I'd rather share them with than you." Their eyes met, full of love and anticipation for the enchanted day ahead. Paris was already working its spell on them, and they couldn't wait to see what other delights the City of Light had in store. Refreshed from their leisurely breakfast, Jae-sung and Min Seo continued their exploration of Montmartre. As they rounded a corner, they found themselves in the famous Place du Tertre, the bustling square at the heart of the neighborhood's artistic history. In the early 20th century, masters like Picasso, Modigliani, and Utrillo had lived and worked in Montmartre, drawn by the cheap rent and bohemian atmosphere. Though the area had changed since then, the Place du Tertre still honored that legacy. Dozens of artists had set up their easels in the square, surrounding the charming central fountain. Min Seo's eyes widened as she took in the vibrant scene. Colorful paintings of Paris scenes covered the cobblestones, their artists calling out to passers-by. Portraitists sketched likenesses of tourists perched on stools. Caricaturists exaggerated their subjects' features to humorous effect, prompting giggles from onlookers. "What an incredible place," she breathed, turning in a slow circle to see it all. "I feel like we've stepped into an impressionist painting." Jae-sung nodded, recalling similar wonder from his first visit years ago. "There's nothing quite like Place du Tertre. Artists have gathered here for over a century to capture the spirit of Montmartre." Min Seo's eyes locked on a painter working on a canvas splashed with pastel hues. Sensing her interest, the young woman looked up and beckoned them closer with a friendly smile. "See something you like?" she asked in accented English, gesturing to the paintings propped around her easel. Dreamy scenes of winding Montmartre streets and the city viewed from Sacré-Cœur covered the canvases. "Your work is beautiful," Min-seo told her sincerely. "You really capture the magic of this place." The artist's smile widened at the praise. She set down her brush and reached for a blank sheet of paper. "For a sweet couple like you, I'd love to do a caricature. A unique souvenir of your time here together. What do you say?" Min-seo turned to Jae-sung, eyes sparkling with excitement. "Oh, could we? I know it's a bit touristy, but it would be such a fun memory of our trip." Jae-sung grinned at his wife's enthusiasm. "I think it's a great idea. We'll want to remember this perfect day in Montmartre forever." Beaming with delight, Min-seo took a seat on the stool in front of the easel. Jae-sung stood behind her, hands resting lightly on her shoulders. They smiled at each other, so obviously in love that the artist couldn't help but smile too as she began to sketch. Her pen flew across the paper, capturing the couple in playful lines and splashes of color. Min-seo's infectious laugh, Jae-sung's warm gaze, the way they gravitated towards each other. The artist translated it all onto the page, her skilled hand exaggerating their features into a whimsical rendition. When she finally turned the finished caricature around to show them, Jae-sung and Min-seo both burst out laughing. The artist had drawn them with giant smiles, hearts in their eyes as they looked at each other. In the background, she had sketched the Sacré-Cœur Basilica and the rooftops of Montmartre, capturing the dreamy Paris atmosphere. "It's perfect," Min-seo declared, accepting the drawing reverently. "A beautiful memory of a magical morning." She turned to Jae-sung, rising up on her toes to kiss him. "Thank you for bringing me here. I'll treasure this forever." Jae-sung wrapped his arms around her, meeting the artist's eyes over Min-seo's head. "We can't thank you enough," he told her warmly. "You've captured our happiness in a way we'll always remember." The artist waved away their praise, clearly pleased. "It's a joy to create mementos of such a wonderful place. I'm happy I could give you this snapshot of your time here." Walking away from Place du Tertre hand in hand, the caricature carefully stored in Min-seo's purse, they both felt suffused with the enchantment of Montmartre. The neighborhood's artistic magic swirled around them, a palpable presence in the air. "Every moment here feels like something out of a dream," Min-seo marveled, leaning her head on Jae-sung's shoulder. "I never want to wake up." Jae-sung kissed her hair, breathing in the scent of her shampoo mingled with coffee and fresh croissants. "Good thing the dream is just beginning," he murmured. "We have so many more Montmartre magic moments ahead of us." As the morning slipped into afternoon, Jae-sung and Min-seo realized they were ravenous after hours of exploring Montmartre's picturesque streets and artistic treasures. The delectable aromas wafting from the many bistros and cafes lining the neighborhood's winding lanes were impossible to resist. "I think it's time we experience an authentic Parisian lunch," Jae-sung declared, his stomach rumbling in agreement. "One of my favorite parts of visiting Paris is indulging in the incredible food." Min-seo nodded eagerly, her own appetite piqued by the mouth-watering scents of garlic, herbs, and butter in the air. "Lead the way," she said, slipping her hand into his. "I can't wait to taste everything." They wandered until a charming bistro on a corner caught their eye. Checkered curtains framed the wide front windows, and a blackboard out front advertised the day's specials in elegant chalk cursive. The tables visible inside were crowded with animated locals gesturing with forks and wine glasses as they savored their meals. "This looks perfect," Min-seo decided, tugging Jae-sung toward the entrance. A smiling waiter ushered them to a cozy table in the corner, handing them worn paper menus before whisking off to fetch a basket of fresh baguette and carafe of water. Jae-sung and Min-seo poured over the menu, mouths watering at the litany of classic French dishes. Escargot in garlic butter, onion soup gratiné, steak frites, garlicky mussels, coq au vin. Every item sounded more tempting than the last. In the end, they decided to share several dishes, eager to taste as much as possible. They sipped chilled rosé and tore off bits of crusty baguette as they waited for their food, absorbing the convivial atmosphere of the busy bistro. The waiter soon returned bearing a tray loaded with their selections, a board of local cheeses and charcuterie to start, followed by a salad of crisp greens, goat cheese, and bacon lardons in a tangy vinaigrette. For the main course, they split a hearty beef bourguignon, the rich red wine sauce redolent with onions, garlic, and thyme. "I've died and gone to heaven," Min Seo proclaimed after her first bite of the tender beef and silky sauce. She closed her eyes in bliss, savoring the medley of flavors. "I didn't know food could taste this good." Jae-sung grinned around his own mouthful, thrilled to see his wife so transported by the meal. "French cuisine is in a league of its own," he agreed, reaching for another morsel of baguette to sop up the luscious sauce. "But I think there's something extra special about enjoying it in Paris, surrounded by the magic of this place." As they ate, they talked and laughed and people watched, admiring the fashionable Parisians at the surrounding tables and peppering their waiter with questions about the neighborhood and food. By the time they sopped up the last bits of sauce with the final hunk of baguette, they were both blissfully sated and a bit tipsy from the wine. "That was, hands down, the best meal of my life," Min Seo declared as they lingered over cups of rich espresso to finish the meal. "I don't know how any other food can compare after this lunch." "Good thing we still have a week's worth of meals to enjoy," Jae-sung reminded her, smiling at the contented glow on her face. "Paris is a city made for lazy, delicious lunches like this one." Paying the check and stepping back out onto the sun-drenched sidewalk, they both felt heady from the wine and the intoxicating Parisian atmosphere. The scents of butter and garlic seemed to linger on their clothes, an aromatic reminder of the meal they had just savored. "I feel decadent and drowsy after that lunch," Min Seo admitted, stifling a yawn as they ambled down the street. "In the best possible way." Jae-sung draped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close as they meandered through the cobblestone streets. "It's the Paris effect," he teased lightly. "Embracing the indulgence is part of the charm. Why don't we stroll around the quieter back streets for a bit to walk off that meal? I'm sure we'll stumble upon some hidden gems." Min Seo leaned into his side, already looking forward to whatever delightful discoveries lay ahead. With Jae-sung as her guide and the enchanting streets of Montmartre to explore, she had no doubt the rest of the day would be just as magical as the first half. Paris was already exceeding her wildest dreams, and it was only their first full day in the city. She couldn't wait to see what other memorable moments the afternoon would bring. Pleasantly full and slightly drowsy from their indulgent bistro lunch, Jae-sung and Min Seo ambled hand in hand through the quieter back streets of Montmartre. Away from the main tourist thoroughfares, the neighborhood took on an even more charming, intimate character. Flowers spilled from window boxes and cats dozed on sun-warmed stoops, lending the narrow cobblestone lanes a timeless air. As they rounded a corner, Jae-sung's eyes lit up with recognition. He tugged Min Seo eagerly toward a stone arch half hidden behind a cascade of purple wisteria vines. "I can't believe this place is still here," he exclaimed, brushing aside the flowers to reveal a weathered wooden door. "I stumbled upon it by accident years ago, but never knew the name." Intrigued, Min Seo followed him through the arch and into a small, shaded courtyard. In the center stood a delicate wrought iron gazebo entwined with climbing roses and surrounded by worn stone benches. The space had a secretive, magical feel, like something out of a fairy tale. "Oh, Jae-sung," Min Seo breathed, turning to take in the hidden oasis. "What is this enchanting place?" He shook his head, wonder in his eyes as he gazed around the forgotten garden. "I'm not sure. There was no sign or plaque when I found it before, but I never forgot how peaceful and removed from the city it felt." They sat together on one of the ancient benches, the dappled sunlight filtering through the rose vines and casting shifting patterns on their faces. The distant sounds of the city faded away, muffled by the garden walls and lush greenery. For a long moment, they simply breathed in the tranquility, absorbed in their own thoughts. When Jae-sung finally spoke, his voice was soft with remembered yearning. That day, the first time I found this place, I wished more than anything that I had someone special to share it with. I was so lonely then, and this secret garden felt like such an incredible discovery. I promised myself that if I ever returned, it would be with the love of my life by my side. Mincio reached for his hand, moved by the wistful memory. And now, all these years later, here we are, she said tenderly, resting her head on his shoulder. What a beautiful wish to have made. I'm so happy I get to be the one to share this with you now. They lingered in the enchanted garden, exchanging sweet kisses and dreaming aloud about the future, until the shifting angle of the light reminded them of the afternoon's waning hours. Fingers entwined, they reluctantly left the hidden refuge behind, steps in perfect sync as they meandered back out into the world beyond. The secret garden was only the first of the tucked-away treasures they uncovered that afternoon. An unsigned dolly canvas glimpsed through a dusty gallery window. An ancient well-worn smooth by centuries of pilgrim hands. A Lilliputian bookstore with floor-to-ceiling shelves crammed with antique leather-bound volumes. Each discovery felt like a tiny miracle, a reward for slowing down and looking more closely at the history-drenched streets. Some of the spots were familiar to Jae-sung from his long-ago student days, their unveiling eliciting delighted reminiscences from that innocent time. Others were entirely new to them both, their serendipitous discovery all the sweeter for the sense of shared adventure. With every meandering step and murmured confidence, Jae-sung and Min-seo felt the bonds between them deepening, gilded with the inimitable romance of Paris. As the afternoon lengthened into early evening and the slanting sun took on the burnished hue of antique gold, they found themselves in a particularly picturesque corner of Montmartre, where an ancient windmill presided over a steep, geranium-lined staircase. Jae-sung paused to frame Min-seo against the colorful backdrop, capturing the moment on his phone's camera. Her brilliant smile and sparkling eyes radiated incandescent joy, so infectious he couldn't suppress his own giddy grin. I wish I could freeze this perfect day in amber, Min-seo said, winding her arms around Jae-sung's neck and drawing him close for a long, sweet kiss. I don't think I've ever been so happy. Paris with you is a dream come true. A dream we never have to wake from, he promised, pulling her closer as the breeze carried the scent of distant flowers and baking bread. Because wherever we are, being with you is the most magical adventure of all. As the golden afternoon light began to soften into the rosy glow of early evening, Jae-sung and Min-seo emerged from their enchanted exploration of Montmartre's hidden corners. Though reluctant to leave behind the secret gardens and forgotten treasures they had discovered, the sight of the neighborhood's main streets coming to life with the dinner crowd lured them back towards the city's bustle. Beneath the twinkling fairy lights strung across the narrow lanes, locals and tourists alike strolled arm in arm, ducking into inviting bistros and brasseries, or enjoying aperitifs at sidewalk cafe tables. The air hummed with the melodic ebb and flow of French conversation and clinking glasses, underscored by the distant strains of music spilling from open windows above. As Jae-sung and Min-seo joined the throngs ambling along the winding streets, a sign outside a patisserie caught Min-seo's eye. Rows of jewel-toned macarons were artfully arranged in the window, the delicate sandwich cookies almost luminous under the shop's warm lighting. "Ooh, Jae-sung, look," she exclaimed, pulling him towards the display. "I've always dreamed of trying real French macarons in Paris. Can we stop in and choose a few flavors?" Jae-sung grinned at his wife's eager expression, remembering his own delighted first encounter with the iconic Parisian treats years before. "You read my mind," he said, holding open the patisserie door for her to enter ahead of him. No Paris experience is complete without a taste of authentic macarons. Inside the shop, the intoxicating aromas of butter, sugar, and finely ground almonds enveloped them like a warm hug. The smiling woman behind the counter greeted them with a lilting bonsoir and began pointing out the neat rows of macarons, arranged by color and flavor. Rose, lavender, salted caramel, chocolate passion fruit, lemon verbena. pistachio, Earl Grey tea. The exotic flavors sounded like something out of a fairy tale cookbook. Min Sio's eyes widened at the gorgeous pastel rainbow, each macaron impossibly dainty and perfect. After much deliberation and guidance from the helpful patissier, they emerged with a small box containing 6 macarons in an assortment of tempting flavors. Min Sio cradled the elegant package reverently, as though it contained some priceless treasure. Jae-sung steered them to a nearby bench with a view of the Sacré-Cœur Basilica, its white domes glowing pink in the setting sun. Settling onto the weathered wood, he draped an arm around Min Sio and drew her close against his side. What a perfect spot for a sweet ending to our magical day. Min Sio marveled, carefully unboxing their selections and holding them out for Jae-sung to choose. He picked a delicate lavender macaron, inhaling the fragrant aroma before popping the whole confection into his mouth. The crisp exterior yielded to a soft, almost cloud-like interior, the floral essence melting across his tongue like a whisper of Provençal summer. Beside him, Min Sio nibbled a rose-flavored macaron, her expression rapturous as she savored the ethereal treat. "I didn't know a cookie could taste like a beautiful perfume," she remarked dreamily, eyes fluttering shut in bliss. "What divine alchemy is this?" Jae-sung laughed, reaching for a rich chocolate macaron with a glossy ganache filling. "The French have truly elevated the humble cookie into an art form," he agreed around a mouthful of the decadent sweet. Macarons are the essence of Paris, distilled into a single perfect bite. For a long moment, they sat in contented silence, admiring the view of the Montmartre rooftops and savoring the exquisite flavors lingering on their tongues. Min Sio sighed happily, snuggling closer to Jae-sung as they watched the sky fade into the silvery blue of twilight. "Every moment of this day has felt like a beautiful dream," she murmured, turning to brush a light kiss across Jae-sung's cheek. "But getting to share this perfect, peaceful pause with you is the sweetest gift of all." Jae-sung tightened his arm around her, overcome with gratitude for the incredible woman by his side and the magical city surrounding them. "I know it's only our first day here," he replied softly, resting his forehead against hers, "but I already can't imagine a more flawless Parisian adventure than this one with you." They finished the last bites of their macarons in perfect harmony, the delicate treats a fitting symbol of the ephemeral magic that seemed to hang in the very air of Montmartre. As the streetlights began to flicker on and the first faint stars appeared overhead, Jae-sung stood and held out a hand to Min Sio. "Ready for our next enchanted moment?" he asked, eyes sparkling with the promise of more delights to come. Min Sio slipped her fingers into his, falling into step beside him as naturally as breathing. As the dreamy haze of the macaron-sweetened interlude melted into the lengthening shadows of early evening, Jae-sung and Min Sio found themselves drawn once more to the siren song of Montmartre's winding streets. The neighborhood had taken on an ethereal glow in the haunted light of the setting sun, the weathered stone buildings blushing rose and gold as though lit from within. Hand in hand, they ambled through the lamplit lanes, admiring the way the encroaching twilight transformed even the most prosaic scenes into moments of magic. The air itself seemed to sparkle with the promise of enchantment, carrying the mingled scents of distant flowers, savory cooking, and the indefinable essence that could only be Paris. Without conscious decision, their steps turned once more towards the Sacré-Cœur Basilica, drawn by the gleaming white domes high above the city. The ancient church had been a luminous presence throughout their wanderings, visible from nearly every corner of Montmartre like a celestial beacon. As they mounted the worn stone steps leading to the basilica's lofty perch, the sounds of the city faded away, replaced by the rhythmic whisper of their own breathing and the soft scuff of their shoes against the weathered treads. Though they had climbed the same stairs just that morning, the ascent felt different now, weighted with the memories of the magical day they had shared. At last, they crested the final flight of steps and emerged onto the broad plaza before the church. The panoramic view of Paris at their feet stole the breath from their lungs, the city's iconic landmarks glittering like jewels against the violet and rose tapestry of the sunset sky. In reverent silence, Jae-sung and Min-seo drifted to the balustrade at the edge of the square, still hand in hand. The vastness of Paris stretched out before them, the serpentine curves of the Seine winding through the sea of rooftops and roads like a ribbon of molten gold. In the distance, the Eiffel Tower loomed against the horizon, its elegant silhouette backlit by the sinking sun. For a long moment, they simply stood together, absorbing the magnificent sight and the profound peace of the elevation. After the whirlwind of wonders the day had held, the still perfection of the aerial view felt like a benediction, a consecration of the love that had buoyed them through every magical moment. Min-seo leaned into Jae-sung, resting her head on his shoulder as they watched the sun slip lower in the painted sky. "I know we have so many more adventures ahead of us," she murmured, her voice soft with awe. "But right now, I can't imagine anything more perfect than this exact moment with you." Jae-sung turned to gather her closer, folding her into the curve of his body as naturally as two pieces of a puzzle fitting together. "You are my adventure," he whispered into her hair, the words fervent with the depth of his heart's truth. "No matter where we are, the greatest magic is sharing each moment with you." They stayed wrapped in each other's arms as the sun dipped below the western edge of the city, the riot of colors in the sky fading into the velvety blue of twilight. All around them, Paris began to twinkle with the glow of a million lights, the Eiffel Tower erupting in a spectacular display of sparkling illumination. Jae-sung and Min-seo watched the city transform into a galaxy of man-made stars, the beauty so breathtaking it brought tears to their eyes. The lights of Paris glimmered like an earthbound constellation, each shining pinpoint representing thousands of other stories unfolding in the night. And there, suspended between heaven and earth on the timeless steps of Montmartre, Jae-sung and Min-seo felt their own love story, expanding to encompass the infinite magic of the city, each light in the glittering vista below a sacred echo of the incandescent joy burning in their own hearts. They lingered in the spellbound hush, unwilling to relinquish the perfection of the moment. In the rarefied air of Sacré-Cœur at sunset, it felt as though the entire universe had aligned to bring them here, to this exact instant of illuminated bliss. Paris had worked its timeless enchantment, and they had willingly succumbed to the exquisite sorcery. As the last rays of the setting sun faded into the deep blue of the Paris night, Jae-sung and Min-seo reluctantly stirred from their timeless moment at the top of Montmartre. Though it felt as if they could have remained in the enchanted bubble of the Basilica steps forever, the practical needs of the earthbound world eventually intruded on their reverie. Hand in hand, they began the slow descent back down to the twinkling streets below, each step a gentle re-entry into the realm of the real. Behind them, the wedding cake domes of Sacré-Cœur gleamed like snow in the moonlight, a luminous reminder of the magical hours they had passed in its shadow. As they reached the neighborhood's winding lanes once more, the ethereal hush of the twilight city wrapped around them like a cloak. The air was cool and sweet with the distant fragrance of night-blooming flowers, carried on the same breeze that had borne witness to a century of Parisian love stories. Jae-sung and Min-seo ambled through the lamplit streets in contented silence, fingers entwined and hearts full to bursting with the memories of the day. Each narrow alleyway and cobblestone square held the echo of laughter and secrets shared, a treasured souvenir more precious than any trinket or postcard. At last, they arrived back at their charming hotel, the windows aglow with the same warm light that spilled from the cafes and flats lining the block. As Jae-sung held the door for Min-seo to precede him into the cozy lobby, she turned to him with shining eyes. "Today was the most perfect day I could have ever imagined," she said softly, reaching up to cradle his face between her palms. "Every moment felt like a fairy tale come to life. I'll never forget the magic of experiencing Paris with you." Jae-sung covered her hands with his own, turning to press a kiss to each palm in turn. "The magic was only a reflection of the wonder that lives in you," he murmured, voice rough with emotion. "Seeing the city through your eyes, sharing each discovery and delight. That was the greatest gift of all. They lingered in the lobby, unwilling to relinquish the enchantment of the day to the mundane necessity of sleep. But as Min Seo stifled a yawn against Jae Sung's shoulder, he chuckled and pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I think it's time to let this perfect day slip into a perfect dream," he said tenderly, leading her towards the antique cage elevator. "We'll need our rest for all the adventures tomorrow will bring." Upstairs in their room, they took their time preparing for bed, moving around each other in the easy rhythm of long intimacy. As Min Seo slipped between the cool sheets with a contented sigh, Jae Sung paused to admire the way the moonlight painted her skin with a pearlescent glow. "Have I told you today how lucky I am to be yours?" he asked, sliding in beside her and gathering her close. Min Seo nestled into the shelter of his arms, already heavy-limbed with the sweet weight of impending sleep. "Only as lucky as I am to be yours," she whispered against his heartbeat. "Today was a dream come true, but the real magic is in knowing we'll wake up tomorrow and do it all again." Lulled by the warmth of their embrace and the memories of the day's enchantments, Jae Sung and Min Seo drifted off to sleep, secure in the knowledge that their Parisian fairy tale was only just beginning. For in a city where every street corner held the promise of wonder, and each glance was heavy with the weight of history's romance, there was no telling what marvels the next sunrise would bring. But wrapped in each other's arms and the timeless spell of Montmartre, Jae Sung and Min Seo knew one thing for certain, that no matter where their feet might carry them in the city of light and love, the true magic would always reside in the unshakable bond between their two hearts. Paris had worked its alchemy on their souls, and they would carry the golden glow of this perfect day with them forever, a talisman against the ordinary, and a reminder that wonder awaited around every corner, as long as they walked through the world hand in hand.